You probably already know that Miss Hepburn is UNICEF's Goodwill Ambassador, and you've been quite literally all over the world. You also know that, much to the chagrin of her fans, Miss Hepburn took leave of the big silver screen for quite a long time while you raised your two sons.
That's right.
What a wonderful, wonderful option.
They got so tall. I did a good job of raising them that they're very tall young men now.
Let me just take 10 seconds to tell them everything I know about you, and you'll fill in the blanks. You're Holland-born.
No.
Netherlands.
I mean, I was born in Belgium.
Belgium.
My
Brussels.
mother was Dutch, and my father Irish.
And you were a little girl during the war, and you lost very close relatives to the Nazis.
Yes.
And you also had moments when you didn't know whether you would have food in the morning.
Many of them, yes.
You were also a beneficiary of UNICEF at that time.
That's right. Right after the war, UNICEF actually was formed. It was then called UNRWA, and it was formed to come to the aid of children in the aftermath of war, when Europe lay in ruins and children were scattered in the streets and were starving.
Your parents were divorced when you were very young girl?
6, yes.
And your mother gave you dancing lessons. Did you ask for them?
She didn't. Yeah, she let me have them because I was dying to be a dancer.
Did they say you were too tall?
I became too tall. Yes,
5'7" was
I just grew and grew. Yes, and I did become awfully tall for a dancer then. Today, modern dance and you know, the tastes have changed. But in those days, most dancers were tiny. And I, at the age of 14, was as tall as I am today, and on point shoes, you know, I towered over the young men that were supposed to dance with me.
You told Barbara Walters that you never considered yourself particularly smashing.
I did tell her that, and it's quite right, yes.
We can... Who is smashing, or who was smashing? Do you recall having, looking at women that you wished you had looked like, or...?
Oh, there's so many. How much time do we have?
Well, I won't press you on it. It's not a fair question. I mean, it obliges you to pick someone over another.
Way back, Ava Gardner and Ingrid Bergman and Elizabeth Taylor. And there's so many beautiful girls now, I couldn't name them all.
So no one was more surprised then?
Michelle Pfeiffer. I think she's gorgeous.
Well, won't she be pleased at being included in that Hall of Fame list? No one could have been more surprised then that you became a star. You must have shocked yourself.
I still am. I'm still in shock.
And you came to America to star on Broadway in Gigi.
And be on your show. It took me a while.
Well, it did. Well, it took us a while to encourage you to do our program, but I assure you, your comment will be in my highlight reel, and I will bore future generations with it. Your first movie, you won an Academy Award.
Yes, how about that?
How did you, and you never became an egomaniac, as far as I can tell.
How do you know?
Well, all the copy, I've never seen bad copy about you.
Well, the press has been very good to me, that's true. But then, you know, it was easy, because I did a test with some 500 other girls. That was the hardest part. But once I was chosen by William Wyler and Gregory Peck, who had approval of his, how they call it, a co-star, but of his partner at the time, allowed me to do this picture. And you can't miss if you're directed by William Wyler and you work with Gregory Peck. You know, I was given every chance.
May I ask how
And I didn't blow it. That's what was good about it.
You didn't. How old were you for Roman Holiday? In Roman
Now you're getting indiscreet.
Well, I also heard you say that you're not self-conscious about your age, so I'm wading into this.
I'm not a bit self-conscious about it. Everybody knows it, even if I was. I was 24 when I did the picture. But a very young 24, because in those days, you know, I was really like a 16-year-old. I mean, I'd had a different life than most kids today and been brought up very strictly and hadn't been in, you know, around the world much. And
you are 60.
60, yes, not 16, no.
60.
60.
And you've had no cosmetic surgery.
Naturally, not. They said he was so great and so friendly. He's asked me about my age, cosmetic surgery. And I don't have a watch, but we haven't done it yet.
And you've never had a weight problem?
No, that I really never have. I have a problem of losing. If I get nervous, I don't eat. I love to eat, but I need not to be nervous to eat. I'm very nervous, you see. I'm nervous now. Yes. Now, if I'm nervous with you, imagine what I'm like when I have to, you know.
You told an interviewer that you like it before you perform and you like it after you perform, but not while you're performing.
If I'm doing a picture, yes, I do enjoy doing the scenes, but the agony I go through before doing something is it's really rather silly. I mean, I had the great honor the other night of receiving a Golden Globe. And I was terribly concerned that the mic would pick up the thumping of my heart while I was speaking. And I'm not nervous now, you see. Now I'm very happy sitting there with you. But I've had a terrible time all day.
All day, anticipating.
I think this will be my epitaph, you know, that it's nerves what done her in, as they said.
Well,
as Liza Doolittle would say.
Let me just explore that just a moment. How does your childhood and the whole being invaded by the Nazis, something most of us have only seen in the movies, you experienced as a child. And then shortly after, you lost loved ones, and then shortly after that, your parents split. You remember, I think you remember...
No, they split before the war, because I was 10 when the war broke out. In fact, I was in England when the war broke out. I was alone in England. My mother brought me back to Holland where they were living. And this was in September, and in May, the Germans marched into Holland. They had first marched into Poland, and Holland was next. And you say, what was it like?
Well, it must have left you very insecure. I don't know if it did. I would guess that it would. I mean,
that is not what left me insecure. My father leaving us left me insecure. For life, perhaps. I do think there are things that, you know, that experiences in childhood form you for the rest of your life. That's also why I'm so concerned with children today, not just that they're starving and so forth, but children that are surrounded by violence and horror, what this is going to do to them. And Unicef can do very little about that. But to come back to childhood, if I think there's so many images that will never go away. Such as we were on the radio, we were told to stay indoors, the country had been invaded, to not even appear at the windows, to close the curtains and so forth. Telling me that, of course, I was behind the curtains and I saw these German tanks come in for hours, marching, driving. And Holland fell after 5 days because it's a small country with a small army, and they fought very bravely, but there was no way of holding back the German army, and all of that is history now. Then followed 5 years, and of course you say, oh my God, isn't that terrible, 5 years of German occupation, which it was. But a child is a child is a child. You live by the day. Obviously it was much worse for my mother in a certain sense than for my family. And just went to school, except that I was shoved into a Dutch school right away, not knowing a word of Dutch, because my mother was worried about this child speaking English in the streets and Germans all around, and she thought that was rather dangerous. So that was a traumatic experience, to end up in a huge classroom not knowing what word that was being said, and every time I opened my mouth, everybody roaring with laughter. That's just great at that age. But it's a great way to learn a language, you know. I can speak Dutch. Then, little by little, yes, there was a knock on the door, and they took my uncle away, who 6 months later was shot, and another uncle too. And my brothers went underground. My uncles were the first hostages to be shot in Holland, and it was actually the turning point, because from that day on, an underground was formed. Because For the first few months, we didn't know quite what had happened. We thought perhaps we were just going to be nicely occupied and, you know, our freedom would be the same. And that's when really the hard times started, because that's when so many reprisals were made and so many people were shot and so many people were rounded up and imprisoned. And after the first few months, all Jews had to wear yellow stars, and they started being rounded up and taken away in trucks. And I'd go to the station with my mother to take a train to the next city, and I'd see cattle trucks filled with Jews, picking up more, was standing around us. And I remember so well a little boy, little blonde boy. My mother had to explain all this to me. We did then not yet know that they were going to their death. We'd been told they were going to be taken to special camps. And why, it was very hard for me to understand, because I was 11 or something, you know. But those images have never left me. But neither have the good ones. I had a marvelous family with a great sense of humor.
You were absent a father. There was no man in your life during this
Yes,
time.
I had my grandfather, and we lived with him, and he did become the father figure in my life. I adored him. And even towards the end of the war, when we really couldn't leave our house much anymore, and there was fighting finally because we were being liberated and so forth, but he and I would do very old crossword puzzles and, you know, sitting around one little lamp and with no heat and nothing. But you must also remember that had we known the first 6 months of the war that we were going to be occupied for 5 years, we might all have shot ourselves. We thought it would be over next week. Well, you know, we get good news with underground radio. It'll be over in 6 months or next year. And that's how we got through those 5 years. And they indeed did get worse and worse and worse. And finally, in the last year, civilians were totally just tolerated but ignored. There were no provisions made. There was no food in the shops. And that last winter, I mean, nothing grows in the winter. You can keep carrots and potatoes for just so long and some turnips. But we were running out of those. And that was really very, very hard.
Did you have to excise this in adulthood? I assume, I mean, did you have therapy? Did you find yourself going through boxes of Kleenex with somebody on these memories? No.
No, not at all. Because the very fact that the day we were liberated was so exciting, and that's when life started again. That is what was so exciting about the aftermath of the war. All the things you'd never had, never seen, never eaten, never worn, started to come back again. That was such a stimulus. And then as soon as I could, I wanted desperately to become a dancer, and I got a scholarship in the Rambert Ballet School in London. Everything was new, everything was exciting, and that has stayed with me till today. It's given me such an appreciation of what we have, and also the greatest luxury of all, and that's freedom, liberty. To be free to say what you want, do what you want, without, you know.
For all those women watching who may have had a separation from their father, you will let me just take you briefly into that part of your...
We now rejoin the program already in progress.
Yeah, the two do go together, I guess. I haven't planned to write my memoirs. I've been asked to write my biography. I must say, right up until yesterday, somebody suggested it many, many times. I might one day, if I have time, have the urge to write a book about experiences, about feelings, about something that I want to express. It'll never be a biography, because a life involves so many other people, and I don't think I have the right to talk about them. I can talk about me, you know. So maybe I will.
Yeah. I just want to say, at 60 years old, you look younger than my sister here.
Yeah, let me get you. I'll be back. Yeah.
I didn't hear the first
Shouldn't we all
part.
have a sister like that coming? Yes. You'll be riding home alone, sis. Yes.
How did you actually get become an actress? Who noticed you, or from dancing school?
You were dancing on.
I became a dancer. That's really what I wanted to do, always. I never wanted to become an actress, nor did I ever think, you know, in those terms. I became an actress because I had to earn a living, and I started doing little bits in movies, you know, to get the extra buck. And, well, I got the extra buck. That's how it started.
You are a beautiful woman, and
Where are you? Ah. I want to hear
and you
that.
exude a very quiet elegance. You also sound like a very concerned parent, and my question is, are you able to get together with your children periodically? And
Never enough. But for instance, it was marvelous. They both came home for Christmas, and I can sometimes get one at a time, but to get them together is very difficult. And I had a wonderful Christmas because of that. And I've just come now from Los Angeles, so I saw my eldest son there. Next week I'll be back in Switzerland, and I'm going to go to Italy to see the younger one. It's not easy, but I see them as much as I can.
May I remind this audience also that you are collaborating with the New World Symphony on a project based on the diary of Anne Frank. You premiere this March 19th at the Academy of Music in Philadelphia, and you will play other cities as well.
Philadelphia, Houston, Chicago, New York, in March. And
with the strong discipline that you have, do you feel the actors and actresses present day have that discipline or lack of?
I think they have maybe even more than in the old days, is what you mean?
Yeah.
Oh, yes, because I think the days are gone when you could just sort of come late and, you know, roll into the studio in a white Rolls Royce after lunch. I mean, movies are so expensive, and I think that is, you know, démodé. I think people are highly professional.
I thank you for calling. Go ahead, caller. Hi.
Hello, my name is Jerry Turturro, and I'm taking her back to the Alcazar Theater in Gigi when I helped buy her first trunk before she got a big break.
That's Trunk, T-R-U-N-K.
That's right.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if she remembers me or not, but she's still a beautiful woman.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, hello. How do you feel when you walk down the street and everybody just looks at you, you know, and recognizes you?
Well, it's very embarrassing. Oh, you mean first. Yes. Yes.
They don't really, you know. I mean, occasionally, yes, but maybe I'm sort of, you know, always sort of in a hurry, and I don't always.
Ms. Hepburn, you mentioned that you were nervous. As beautiful and talented as you are, can you let this audience know what you have to be nervous about?
Well, now that I've seen the audience, I'm not nervous anymore. And, but you must admit, you know, that if you're sort of thinking about it, might be nervous. But also, I'm nailed down, so I can't run away.
And we'll be back in just a moment. You wanted to say, Ms. Hepburn, you wanted to say.
I wanted to say that I'm terribly lucky to have come to Unicef in this day and age, just as you are all lucky to live in this day and age too, because ours is the first generation that has the means and the technical and scientific knowledge and the money to save 14 million
Services
children
provided and promotional fees paid by the following.
Roy Hill's contemporary